Welcome to the Intelligent Business Show, a podcast from Aberdeen discussing the latest trends in marketing and sales to keep you and your business at the top of your game. And now here's your host, Aberdeen's VP of Marketing, Jessie Cohen.
I have Heidi Rawding here. She's currently the Senior Director of Revenue Operations at RapidMiner. RapidMiner is a predictive analytics platform. Hi, Heidi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Why don't you give us a little one-liner about what you do at RapidMiner?
Sure. I am, as you said, the Senior Director of Revenue Operations, and my focus is primarily to reduce non-revenue generating tasks from sales, whether that be the systems they use, the processes we ask them to follow, or the way we interact with one another. That sums it up in a nutshell.
So you make sales lives easier.
Yes, that is definitely one of the outcomes.
Great. So tell me a little bit about what led you into this role. Give us a little bit of your past or your history there. It's an interesting role. I know it's cropped up at a lot of B2B organizations, but I'd love to hear and share with our audience, how you got here.
Yeah, absolutely. My path is very unique. I actually went to school for marine biology, and I worked at the Scenic Zoo in Arizona. What I thought was my dream job turned out to not really pay back any of the student debt I had mounting up. So I actually moved back to Boston and found an interesting job on Craigslist, because that's what we did over a decade ago.
It's true.
For a company called Rapid7 before they even had VC funding. And I started when there were about 30 people there. And the role at the time was actually called sales support, which in essence is a sales admin doing anything, everything, just to help sales get by and improve productivity a little bit, but not effectively. So I really stumbled into this, and what I noticed was everyone was working very, very hard, but not smart. So I started tinkering around with the system, the CRM, improving and automating little things to start, whether it be call connects that they used to be writing down manually on paper, handing them in to me at the end of the day. I'd file them up into Excel, give the report to the boss.
Oh, man.
Completely manual. Yes. And so boring and mundane that I was quickly getting bored. So I just started thinking, what if we put a checkbox on this person in the system? And then I created a report. Boom, 5 hours saved per week.
Nice. So you've been using, with your marine biology background and kind of thinking about optimizing, check boxes, sales, implementation, automation, and all that. You've been using data a lot in a lot of different ways. Talk to me a little bit about how you use data in your role currently. And that's a loaded question right there, but maybe you can pick a couple of interesting things to share.
Sure thing. And to your point, I think the biology background actually gives me a little bit of an edge. The thing about biology is you want to understand how all the pieces work together. And when something breaks over here, people don't often think about the downstream or even upstream effect of how it could impact something way over there. And I learned that quickly in biology, and I think it translated really well into operations, which is why I enjoy the field so much. But data is huge in my life. It's vital. I use it pretty much in every aspect, in every way. There's always some sort of element towards it. It could start with when I'm looking to purchase new software. I start gut checking the tools with other people in my field, other peers at other companies. How do you solve for a problem like this? Was a new system like this increase productivity, or is the ROI not there? But really, the entire business intelligence aspect of it, whether it be creating new territories for sales, defining stages, top of the funnel, MQL, PQL, competitive analysis, it could go on and on and on. I use it every day.
Nice. So tell me, you're talking about optimizing ways that sales can do their jobs better or ways to reduce noise within sales queues. Do you have an example or two maybe on how an interesting way that you've used data, or you came across a data set and you're like, oh, this is cool. Maybe this will help, a real world example that you could share that talks about how you've helped sales do their jobs better or close deals, or, some sort of like unique way that you've, like your checkbox example earlier.
Absolutely. We recently purchased a tool called SalesLoft, and what it does is automate emails and to some extent personalization on the behalf of sales reps. So what we learned is by sales reps using this, it reduces minimally 1 hour per day. And if I take that 1 hour, which equates to 20 hours per month, and then you multiply that by the number of reps you have, the ROI and success rate there, it's just self-explanatory.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a great use case. It's people don't think about, you think about data in terms of the stuff that you're ingesting into your CRM systems and you're optimizing, the funnel between whatever your stages are. But we don't think about it looking at it in terms of time or hours spent. As marketers, we don't always think about it from that perspective. So that's a great example. How can I reduce the amount of time spent on one menial task, outside of automation or finding software to solve some of those problems? So
Absolutely. I think also in that same vein, people forget to use it for their own selfish reasons, if you will.
True.
I've used data to prove any new hire I've ever wanted, really ever, because sales operations is a little mysterious to a lot of folks. They know we're working hard. They know we're valuable, but showing that value in terms and quantifying it is really difficult for so many of my peers that I really didn't recognize what I was doing was almost innovative. I have shared with many, many folks my simple Excel sheets and outputs of where team members spend time, how you can justify it per system, per use case, whether it be sales productivity or other departments. And never have I had an issue getting another headcount with any of the data I've shown.
That's a great example. Tell me a little bit about how you do that. If I were going to, let's say we weren't recording a podcast right now and I said, okay, girl, tell me how you did this. Show me, how do you do the math? If you're talking to a non-data person or a non-sales person, how would you explain that? And I didn't mean non-salesperson, but there's a lot of marketers and sales folks out there who aren't data inclined and don't think about it from an analytical fashion. How would you help them think more analytically? It's a much more pointed question for you.
Absolutely. One I've been asked before because I really didn't recognize how infrequently it's used. But it started for me as simple as using Jira for my sales ops team because my team was made up of so many different roles: deal desks, RFP writer, system admins, developers, analysts. It really is an interesting system to use because what we can do is log their time spent in a very quick manner. I'm not having them filling out what they're doing all day, writing out paragraphs, anything like that. They could send to an email alias the subject of what they're doing and log the time. So therefore, at the end of the month, we would go through and we see per person who is over capacity, who is under capacity. Can we move some of this to someone else's plate? If we don't have an expert in that area, do we need to hire another one? And at the same time, making sure as a manager that they're spending their time wisely. Because sometimes some of the tickets sales reps send in might not be a good use of their time. So I can use it as a managerial tool as well as, okay, this person's extremely under capacity. She has done 20 RFPs, which takes 5 hours each, and she's project managing this pre-sales new writing platform. Okay, we need to expand her team.
That's pretty genius. I'm not going to lie. And I may be walking back to my team and saying, let's have a conversation of how we can think about this differently. What would you say is your biggest pain point right now when it comes to working with data? Or what's your biggest challenge that you're dealing with at this moment in time?
That is a great question.
And it's a hard one.
Probably it is, but it's a good one. I would have to go with the most painful is likely to be the reiterative process. For example, the customer buyer journey changes constantly. Everyone's seen it over time. Everyone talks about it over the time. There's platforms that even are intended to solve this issue. For me, starting with back to the basics of what is our MQL and PQL definition? Just because they got us here doesn't mean they're going to get us there to the next level. Doesn't mean it's still the same. So I need to go back constantly and reevaluate. See, am I missing anything? Has something else in their buying behavior changed that we either wasn't relevant before or we missed before? So that constant reiterative loop of ensuring we're aligned with how everyone is buying today, or any behavioral change for that matter.
Yeah, I could see how that could be a little bit cumbersome. In that process, do you find there's good data and bad data? How do you weed through what's useful and what's not?
It's really interesting. I think about this one a lot. I don't know if I personally have the issue of good data versus bad data. I've had the luxury of spending the first year of my current gig just making sure the right customers were in the system, and then capturing how do they use our products, when do they use it, why, so that we can make informed decisions. However, I do think in that vein, people can get distracted by noise. And to me, it's navigating through the noise that can make bad decisions out of data. So, for example, attribution. I feel like this is a pretty unsolved issue across many organizations that I've gone.
100% true. How do we make sure we're getting the right credit?
It's so mind-boggling. I feel like this should be solved. Also, in that bit, a really good conferencing tool. There's no such thing as a perfect conferencing tool in this day and age. But back to attribution, for lack of a better word, the age-old battle or encounter of marketing versus sales. And is it the first touch that matters? Is it the last touch? Is it what they did before they became an opportunity? Is it what the sales rep enters as their win-loss reasons and their win reports? I think that is where it can get very messy very quickly. And I think the alignment around the key business objective, and then also just all agreeing on what the success criteria is the only way you're going to make progress there.
True. It is a conundrum. I think I've used that word already, but it's it's the biggest pain that I think a lot of us feel. Which actually leads me into a great question. Thinking about the future of data and where some of this stuff is headed and how we're overcoming, outside of conferencing tools, how we overcome some of these challenges. In your opinion, what do you think is next? And, then conversely, I'll ask you, where do you think we're going to be in a few years with it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the old Forbes saying was 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years. And I think that quote was used last year at a Tableau conference I went to. So the craziness is the world is becoming more and more digitized. And there's going to be so much more data, and there already has been since that quote was released in 2018. So how do we navigate through the noise, ensure that we accomplish what we're set out to? And I think that's going to be really difficult because people tend to have knee-jerk reactions and try to get things done quickly because there's a lot of pressure too. It's not their fault. It does come from the top quite frequently, and they just don't know what they don't know. So while that pressure is there, you just have to ensure the business objectives across the board. Just because they're your boss's business objectives doesn't mean they're necessarily the company's. So getting that from the top down, having alignment across the board in agreement that these are our key objectives we're going to go for. This is success criteria tied to it so that everyone's working towards the same goal. And I think it also is always going to be important to reiterate that back to that constant evaluation and course correction. It's the only way for success that I know of.
Let me ask you this. As SEO was 10, 15 years ago, and then you had the rise of content marketing, and more recently you've seen ABM float around and become a thorn in everybody's side. What do you think's next? Or let me ask you, we here at Aberdeen talk a lot about data, obviously, and we're talking about intent data. I know you mentioned earlier about your Forbes quote and how a lot of data has been, or the majority of the world's data has been created recently. I'll butcher their quote if I say that. I'd love to get some of your thoughts on, as we get more analytical with sales and marketing, and particularly within your role, do you think intent data is next? Have you used it before? What are your impressions there?
So I might be a little biased here. It is actually one of the key drivers for me to joining RapidMiner. I am fascinated by data. I am a true believer that it is going to be one of the biggest, if it isn't already, in industries and leverages or tools that people can use moving forward. I didn't know anything about data science before I joined RapidMiner, really nothing. I have a BI background, but that was pretty much it, which BI is looking at the past. Predictive analytics is looking at the future and how we can positively impact outcomes. So I think the future lies with AI, machine learning, data science, and all of the subsets that come along with it. And the more and more customers I see we make successful using this is mind-blowing to me. I had no idea the depth and breadth of what data science could do for folks. And the fact is, there's not enough data scientists in the world. So that's why these tools, just like RapidMiner, sorry for the shout out, is more imperative than ever. So I think that's the direction.
Good. All right, I have 2 more questions. What's the best piece of business advice you were ever given?
I love when my old boss said to me, back to basics. I think in any hypergrowth company, and I've been lucky to be part of a few quite successful ones, that when you grow so quickly, people tend to overcomplicate, over-engineer, ask for forgiveness later, and trust me, I'm one of those people. But I think at every key milestone, you need to hit pause. You need to go back to basics, make sure that the foundation is still secure, the frame is still standing correctly before you worry about all the pretty shiny cosmetic appliances, if you will.
That's a great piece of advice. It's one that we use frequently around here as well. So making sure that we've got, for lack of a better term, our ducks in a row, we're clear on the goals, that we really understand what we're trying to achieve before we march forward and put, the chrome on it. So that's great. All right, my last question is non-data related. So, but I feel like you may have already answered it. But yeah, so I'm going to ask it anyways. But give our listening audience one fun fact about you, maybe that folks don't know.
So aside from my marine biology stint and moving to Phoenix, Arizona to work at their zoo, actually right before that, right after college, I spent a year with AmeriCorps in New Orleans doing Katrina disaster relief work. And it was the best year of my life. It was fantastic.
Wow, that's a great fun fact on many levels. So,
yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Heidi. It was a pleasure. I love the tidbits that you were able to give our listeners. I definitely think there's some good takeaways that we'll probably consider implementing here. And so I hope our audience will enjoy listening. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in today. Next week, I'll be sitting down with Jackie Leahy from Link Squares. She's in charge of their revenue operations and has some fantastic tips on how she's able to use data to help her sales team get some killer wins. You don't want to miss it. See you all next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Intelligent Business Show. You can find all our episodes on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and most other places you tune in to podcasts. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @Aberdeen Group and on Instagram @Aberdeen_life.